gonna start now. So welcome everyone to SU Coaching Saturday live session with Rose Liu today, who is an incredible writer who's been awarded the Modern Letters. Oh, yes. Oh, they can see Rose only.
Oh, okay.
They can't see me. Oh, really? Oh my gosh, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
I can see your video again, Suki. You've unfrozen for me, but I don't know about for everyone else.
Okay, I think there's something wrong with the technicalities, but
Okay.
that's as long as people can see you, that's the most important part. Oh yeah, Laura can see me now.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, so today we have Rose, who is the winner of Modern Letters Creative Nonfiction Prize with her book, All Who Live on Islands. And she's also a software engineer. And before I introduce her, if you're new to the channel, my name is Suki, and I am a certified coach based in New Zealand, helping people to find their purpose, gain self-confidence and self-love. And I used to be an agile coach, coaching teams and leaders to perform better. And these Saturday live sessions will continue from now on for an infinite amount, hopefully. I don't know how long it will go for, but what I want to do is to build a purpose-driven community through these Saturday live sessions. So 1 week I will interview an incredible person that I think that's purpose-driven in our community, and with another week doing a book review. So today who we have as guest is Rose, who is a dear friend of mine. Like I said, she has won the Modern Letters Creative Nonfiction Prize with her book, All Who Live on Islands, which is a collection of her personal stories about growing up in New Zealand. And I really enjoy her writing, which was very honest and moving with her real experiences of being discriminated and how she has moved through her identity of New Zealand, being New Zealand Chinese, as well as the class systems that she has observed in her life. And apart from being an author, Rose is also a software engineer who has worked in several software development companies. Right now, she is a remote software developer for BuildKite, which is a continuous integration company that's completely remotely based. So welcome, Rose.
Kia ora, everyone. Hi. Thanks for the introduction, Suki. Yeah, nice to be on the channel. Yeah.
Oh, good. I think I missed something as well about how you been featured in several magazines. Okay, let's get started with the conversation. Rose, I remember the first time that I've met you, and I think that was in Wellington when we were volunteering for Youthline as counselors. And I was like, whoa, there's another Chinese New Zealander that's volunteering in this Youthline counseling community. And you struck me as someone that is very confident, someone that's not afraid to speak your opinions and for what you think are important. So I really want to ask you, and I think this will help with other people who have known you as well, that how have you become this person that you are, for someone that's so confident, express your opinions and not afraid to go after what you want?
I guess it's I feel like I've never really had the choice not to be that way. I think given how hard it is for Asian New Zealanders to succeed and to be recognized, I think that the people who do succeed and who I recognize do tend to be confident, do tend to be go-getters, because if you don't, then you just can't attain sort of the same sort of things that if you were not to be like Pakeha have it easier, but it's just I think that there are different standards and different ideals that we need to meet. And I just read the book Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, which is kind of he is an African-American man, and it's written as a story to his son. And a thing that he says quite often is that they have to struggle twice as hard to get half as much. And I think that's kind of something that rings really true for all people of color living on colonized lands, that we're always having to do twice as much to sort of achieve the same sort of things, or not even achieve as much as our peers. And I think it's just kind of, I feel like it's like it sucks, but it's kind of been a necessary response to the surroundings around us, like I think if I look at sort of my contemporaries within sort of the Asian literature scene, like they're all lawyers, they're all doctors, they're all like senior like policy officials, like, whereas if I look at my Pakeha friends who are doing writing, they're like they work at cafes, they like they have they have a much, like, they don't have that type of really, I don't know, I feel like there's sort of this pressure for really extreme success, and I don't think it's and I don't know if it's sort of self-manufactured from our own ideas of we must be successful here because it's what our parents expect, or it's hard to tell where that comes from. But I think that sort of the people that you see and who are visible for being successful Asian New Zealanders do all tend to be like that, because it's so hard to sort of get there.
I get what you mean. I get what you mean by like minority sections of the community having to work harder in order to be visible. And there is a certain idea of what that working hard or being visible mean. And like, I really wonder if there was another way around it. It's hard to stand out, I guess, without being visible or being successful in this way.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of it's to do with sort of how we recognize success and how we recognize achievement. And I think that because like if you look at a lot of, this is really pervasive in the arts, it's really pervasive in tech, but like if you look at sort of like the leadership across all of these organizations, it always tends to be like older Pakeha men or sometimes Pakeha women. So it's kind of like the things that they look for are more aligned with their worldviews. Whereas if like you had someone different in leadership, maybe they would look for different qualities to recognize in people. But like as it stands, that is not the status quo. So it's kind of like to even get on that radar, I feel like you just need to try a lot harder than if people were actually, recognizing like different types of achievement.
That is very true about what the majority is looking for, and that's true about human nature as well, that we feel safer with people that look the same, that sound the same as us. Therefore, we promote the people that we think are the same. That's really, really hard to break out of. It really requires someone that is at the top of an organization or a community to recognize that there are different traits of those achievement or success, like you say, and deliberately bring those people out in order for a more diverse community. That's a hard topic. I don't know what's the solution for it. Like, have you thought about this much about?
Yeah, I guess it's like, I think different organizations are open to different levels of change. Like, I think, like it would be very radical to be like, well, all the heads of publishing and all the CEOs of the tech companies need to be replaced and we need to put different candidates in. But it is kind of like, without something like that, I can't see a lot of that changing organically, because it just takes so long, it's so
it takes time for the people to come up, and also it takes a lot of consciousness for that as well. And what I'm going to go to is actually read out a quote that you have written in your book, which I think is related to what we said, because like when I was going through high school, I found myself trying to assimilate to the majority rather than being proud of being a minority. And I thought this was really relevant, that what you said here is that you said, this is from your essay of All Who Live on Islands, in the book of All Who Live on Islands. And you said here that I had acquired a passive form of racism that is pervasive among well-intentioned New Zealanders, one born of unaddressed ignorance. I had leaned into the idea that there were right and wrong types of immigrants, and in my desperation to be seen as one of the good ones, the ones who assimilated and spoke perfect English, it was necessary to cast out others who did not do the same. That is just such honesty. I feel pain as I read it because I've gone through the same journey myself. Yeah, how do you feel about that quote now? Like, it's about 2 years on now that you have written that.
I mean, I think it's kind of something that all people sort of go through. You know, like even people who are coming to New Zealand now and migrating here, I can see them going through that same thing in like 3 to 5 years. And I think it's like such a natural response to like wanting to be included, and like a good way to sort of be included is to like force someone else to be excluded. And it's just like a sad sort of state of things. And I think especially for people like us, you know, the sort of like 1.5 generation, because we kind of came early enough where we sort of have mainly been in a English language education system, and we've mainly been in that sort of culture, it is sort of like relatively easy to kind of just move through and like kind of like you put on your little your white face and your like white, you know, like you know what it looks and it sounds like and what it feels like, and it's really easy to adopt. And the other thing is that people are really willing for you to adopt that and to just not question it because it's easier for them as well, you know. And I think and it, you know, like it kind of works both ways. And I think that's kind of like one of the so interesting things about like Asian identity in a lot of countries is that we have this like proximity to whiteness in a way that sort of like people of different colors just like they can't have. Like we're sort of allowed to sort of assimilate to a certain degree and be invisible in their communities until it sort of becomes inconvenient for other people. And then it's kind of, you know, like with all the coronavirus stuff, it's really just like blown up in everyone's faces. But it's, you know, like if we are quiet and if we are hardworking, we're sort of just allowed to be these individual contributors to a Pākehā society and sort of uphold their ideals. But it's,
Yes, this reminds me of how like every relationship, it's kind of like the good and the bad, and then it's like a trade. As long as that trade is still in balance, then that relationship is there. But if the trade of the bad things are more, then that relationship is going to break. That's really difficult because that's human beings being in a survival mode of I need to be like this in order for my genes to reproduce. Yeah. My gosh. I don't know where to go from here. It's such a deep topic. Because I guess now, how comfortable are you with your own identity, like of white Asian, being someone that is creative as well in a very almost like industrial type of job, being a software developer, just in a different way? Yeah, how comfortable are you with your own identity at the moment?
Like I think I feel like identity is often like for other people rather than for yourself. Like I think there was definitely like things I needed to sort of do and understand to sort of reconcile like being Chinese, and a lot of that involved like going back to China and you know, like understanding more of that culture and that language and being like, oh, okay, there's like many ways to be Chinese because all the Chinese people I met were really different from each other. But I guess like sort of like where I am now is it's like it's not something that I feel like I need to think about as much anymore. And it's often kind of like identity labels are kind of more useful for other people than it is for yourself, because I feel like everyone has such like a particular understanding of how they live and be in the world. And then sometimes these markers are kind of sort of like shorthands for other people to try and understand rather than us understanding ourselves. Does that sort of make sense?
Yes, it makes sense, because whether certain aspects of that identity of the other person that is getting to know us know that, then they could go like, oh, the person with this type of identity, they generally do this, and they generally do things this way. Therefore, I should act this way towards them. Yes, that makes a lot of sense about identity. It reminds me of this comedian that's in the US, Ali Wong, and she talks about she is an Asian woman in comedy, and she always gets asked this question of like, oh, how is it being an Asian woman in comedy? Like that is the label that other people have put her, rather than how is being a comedian or something. That's also another label. Yeah. So that's and identity is such a fascinating subject actually for behavioral change in general. And as a coach, that if we're able as people to identify our own identity, a lot of times we don't even know what our own identities are for ourselves. It's quite subconscious. And if we're able to identify our own identity, then we're able to know what are the behaviors that are aligned to that identity that we're doing. And if we are able to update that identity that we have, then the behaviors will update itself as well. So for example, if we have an identity of being Asian and we link being Asian as like, oh, we got to be like quiet and studious and do all these achievements. And if we want to change that part of ourselves of being quiet and studious and do all these achievements, then we need to actually update that identity of being a bit more fluid than the successful Asian person that we see ourselves are. Yeah, so at the moment you would say that your identity is a lot more fluid and quite complicated as well.
Yeah, and I feel like everyone's identity is complicated, right? Like, you know, like two people aren't ever really the same. And sure, there will be like parallels within groups, but I think it's often, I guess I like feel like I'm in a post-identity label phase of my life. You're where like I'm like
stage.
I'm like, it's not that useful for me. And like I feel like it's more useful for other people. And like I think it's I guess like maybe a few years ago I would have really needed people to understand what my particular interpretation of being like a Chinese New Zealander is. But I'm just like look, it's so much work for me to explain it to you. I wrote this book, just go read it, you know, like it's kind of
there's so much more in your book.
Exactly. I feel like that book is kind of a response to that question of like, oh, like how does it feel to be a Chinese New Zealander? I'm like, it's just like, you know, it's something that you're constantly having to explain to people, and I'm like very well intentioned, and I'm glad you want to find out more, but also like just go read the book.
There's so much that you explored in the book. Like there's so much, and this is something that I personally has not experienced too much, and because I think I'm very privileged, is that of class. And you talked a lot actually in your stories about the different classes that you see, and how the movement of class, of you moving through that class yourself. Yeah, can you talk to us more about that?
Yeah, I think I think I was reading this book once about like feminism in China, and I think one of the ideas that they raised was that I guess like the traditional sort of like Western axes of feminism is like gender and like sexual orientation and stuff like that, whereas I think what the sort of the translators noticed was that like in Chinese feminism they interrogated class a lot more, and I think that's completely true, because it's kind of like it informs so much of your life, and it's kind of it's almost invisible sometimes, but it's I think personally for me I have seen like the huge impacts of like just not having money on my family, and it's you know, like it's hard, and sort of having come through that and like being in like a very like stable and well paid sort of job now, it's really like my everyday life is really different. But I like even within like my house and noticing like the differences between me and my flatmates, there's just all these like really ingrained habits that I have that I'm just like, oh, I'm just like used to saving these things, and like I don't need to anymore. But I don't have like a lot of like middle class habits when it comes to do with like money and resources, because I've just like for a long time in my life that wasn't the norm. So a lot of my habits are just like, oh, like you just reuse everything, save all your containers and all that sort of stuff. And like, whereas I'm like, you know, like I notice people around me, like they're just like way more casual about that sort of stuff, and that still feels a bit foreign to me sometimes.
Yeah, I think like that is like a depiction also of how different societies are in terms of their stage of moving through that class. Because when I think about my relatives, my uncles and aunties and my mum's generation, their class is still like very in a poverty state of like, they talk about the hardship of Cultural Revolution, of having no food, no education to go to. And then compared to that, a Western society at the same time of how affluent people are at that time already and what kind of habits that they've got because of that affluency. Like that's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
And those differences are very hard to catch up on, really. And whether they also need to be caught up on, that's a different story. Like that's a different question.
Yeah, and I remember like having like a conversation once with a friend of mine, like a workmate, and I think we were talking about money, and like we just personally had really different spending habits. And then I think we sort of talk about how like our parents treated money as while we were growing up. And she said something to me about how like all throughout her childhood, like money was never an issue for them if they wanted to do something. And it's just really different if you've never been brought up with this idea that it's like a finite resource. I think you just treat it quite differently. Like, you're just like, can't spend it all today. Like, what if there's none for tomorrow? Like, it's just sort of like this sort of idea that I'm like, wow, other people don't think about that. Like, it's not something that's, yeah.
It's another sense of safety. Yeah, and another source of worry for a lot of people that are not that well privileged, and it's really hard to get out of that poverty cycle, like what you said. Yeah, and like with all these experiences that you've had in New Zealand as well as being in China when you were little to now, like how has that helped you to define what is your purpose, if there was something that you're looking to do for a community or for society?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I'm not like a big believer in like individual action. Like I think, I don't know, it feels a bit conceited to be like, oh, I can change the world. And I don't like, you know, like I think I could support things and be part of a collective that could change something, but I don't, you know, I'm not like, oh, I'm going to write the best novel and it will change everyone's minds about racism. Like I just don't think that's going to happen. I think that change is slow and it is incremental, and I think that I'm aware of like what influence I can have, and it's you know, like I think I can influence the people around me, and I can influence you know, I can make small changes and to my life and to other people's lives that improve it. But I think I'm like maybe realistic about what that looks like. And not to say that I'm not like, I don't believe in big change, but I don't know if I could really do that. Yeah.
It's almost like you seeing the limit of your power, and you believe in the power of more of a collective doing an action to get the change that they want.
And I think it's more effective that way as well, rather than being like, I don't personally strive to be in a position of power where I could do a big change, because I don't know, I feel like it's I would question my like my remit to sort of do that. You know, it feels quite weird. Yeah, I think people who are in positions of power should always be listening to people around them. Yeah.
Then let me ask you, like, what kind of influence do you want to have then within the power that you have?
I think I want people to sort of just be more compassionate towards themselves and to the people around them, and sort of feel comfortable kind of, you know, like addressing things that they believe in as they come up, and also like passing that on, you know. Like I think my main thing is I'd really like people not to be bystanders when they see something, and it's really easy to be a bystander. Yeah.
Or not be a bystander, like if there is an action that needs to be called out, for example, if there was a microaggression towards a minority, for example, then call it out, be that ally for that person and go, hey, this behavior is actually not so acceptable, or have you thought about what is the impact of that behavior?
Exactly. Like I think, you know, like a lot of my friends are Pakeha, and I feel like maybe within their spaces there are things that they could be doing to address microaggressions, or even, you know, just aggressions in general. And if they have those sort of tools to be like, oh, hey, that wasn't quite on, this is what maybe you should have done instead, this is how someone might have felt if they had heard that or seen that sort of thing, you know. And it's kind of like, I can't be there when those things sort of happen, and if you sort of have the people around you feel comfortable calling out those sort of situations, and it's kind of like, you know, like everything's kind of improving a bit incrementally.
Yeah, incrementally. And definitely this reminds me of the Ally Skills workshop that I've done in Xero, and I'm actually interviewing the person that's the founder of the Ally Skills New Zealand not next week, the week after, Lauren Pete. Yeah, and she talks a lot about the power of being an ally, someone that is in the majority of the society, helping the minority by identifying those behaviors that are not helpful. Yeah, we've got a question online by Laura. Let me just show that. There we go. Laura, this is for Rose.
Rose, do you think it's important for other New Zealanders to understand the identity/cultural differences of Chinese New Zealanders? Would this change New Zealand identity itself? Yeah, I think, I mean, I find New Zealand identity a really strange concept in itself, because we are such a young country.
Yes.
And also I often wonder if, like, when people think New Zealand identity, is that like Pakeha New Zealand identity, or is it, you know, like if we used like Aotearoa identity instead, like would that be a different thing that we're talking about? But I guess, like, in general, it's I think that for me, like, what is important is like to acknowledge that Chinese people and other Asian people and lots of people from other countries have been in New Zealand like almost as long as Pakeha, and we're all kind of, you know, like we're all migrants. And that's kind of like what I was trying to get to with the book, is like everyone here who was not Indigenous has not been here for that long. And if you sort of like, you know, go forward in the clock by 100 years, sort of like the differences between the first Pakeha settler and the first like Asian settlers is not really going to be that much or that substantial. So it's kind of, I think we sort of need to all acknowledge that we're all the migrants here, and we all approach like, you know, an understanding of biculturalism and living within Aotearoa together. And I guess what's missing, what I feel like is missing at the moment, is that currently the negotiation feels mostly like it's between the Crown and we. And I think that's, again, a part of like Pakeha people need to make more space, because I think they are also migrants here, but they don't, because they hold so much power, like they don't really acknowledge that. And yeah, there is a long history of Chinese migration in New Zealand as well.
Yes. Yes, definitely. And there was like poll tax back in the days of taxing people that are Chinese because of their race. Yeah, and that history, it's really, I guess it's hard to change when the majority in power is still Pākehā. And like you said, I think this links to the first points that we talked about how needing to be more visible as minorities in order to get the voice, to get the messages out there, and to gain some position of power so that we can balance that with the Pākehā power that they have. Yeah. Oh, this is a question from Shannon, and that was actually the question I'm going to ask you next. Very good question. Yeah. How did you find and amplify your voices or those messages that you really want to get out there?
I personally find sort of the Asian, like the wider Asian arts community is incredibly supportive. Like I think of the sort of like people who've sort of been around longer, like people like Kerry Ann Lee and Roosevelt Tan, they are absolutely like they're such good champions for the rest of us, and they are sort of in places where they do have more of that sway, and it's like I think both I really value both of them because they both kind of like make it their business to sort of know who everyone is and to sort of push everyone's work as much as they can, and it's just such a valuable thing that they do. And then it also reminds, and I'm conscious that like, I also want to do that as well. If someone's done that for you, you've seen how much impact that has, you want to pay it forward. And I think that currently we do a really good job of sort of supporting each other in the community. And also like I have, like, my publisher has been really, really great. I think they have been really, really supportive of me, and they have, so it is like, a combination of having good allies and also having good people in the community who are doing that work. But it has, I don't know, to me, it feels like it's picked up a lot more in the last 5 years than it ever really sort of has before. And I think maybe it's kind of an acknowledgement of like, if you sort of look at the ages of people and the waves of migration towards New Zealand, like that major wave in the 90s, which is kind of like a lot of when me and you and a lot of people did come, like we're all sort of getting to the stage now where we are able to do those things, like, so I'm sort of hopeful that in the future there will be more people who will add their voices to the conversation.
Yeah, add the voices to the conversation. And I think this also reminds me of like the work that I was doing in Zero, coaching and mentoring young women. And a lot of them will say to me like, oh, I would rather not play the game. Like, I don't want to put myself out there because I just don't even believe in the system that is operating at the moment. So let me withdraw myself out. And what I used to say to them, and I still say to the people, it's like, well, we got to be at least in the game in order to change the game. If we are not able to be in the game, to be allies for ourselves and other people, then that game is never going to be changed. It is hard work to get to a position of power, to be able to influence, like you said, that now that we're all in our 30s now, that we're in our 30s, we're at some point in the society being able to change something that is within our power. Yeah. Do you have any take on that, on like playing the game and how to still stay sane, like still stay to who we are, truly are, and want to be?
Yeah, that's something I think about a lot, actually, about like I'm really conscious that I am playing the game, and I don't, and I think people just have to, like, it's all well and true to sort of be like, I do actually think a lot of like really systemic things about how we operate is fundamentally broken, but it's kind of like it's refactoring a software project. Do you know what I mean?
You go back to the code.
If you want to refactor a software project, and if you want to it's really hard to build something new in parallel with an existing legacy system. And so it's kind of like, well, you can also just be in that legacy system and making these incremental changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that actually reminds me of like two things that I do in coaching. One is like being able to accept what it is at the moment and not wishing that it's not something else. Because if we keep on wishing that it's something else, that we actually are not like at the same stage of what the reality is. So we need to accept that's the reality and then do our bit from that reality to change that reality. It's the same with the old code base. And another thing that reminds me of coaching is that I know that what you said is that you're admitting that you're playing the game. And I think that is to a really good purpose. And that we need to be reminded of that, because as in coaching, a lot of times I will probe the coachee in order for them to really realize what is happening, for them to accept that this is the pain that they're going through. Without them knowing that this is the pain, then like I know I'm doing this deliberately and I know that they're experiencing pain when I probe them, but this is all for a better cause, because they're going to come out the other end the better. So that's why I still do what I do, even though I feel bad. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, I think it's really true that I guess, I think that's also something I felt like I had to come to terms with in the last 3 years, is kind of like if I want, if I want to do things, I do have to play the game in some respects. And I think for me personally is, I guess it's kind of like I still need to have those spaces and those like bubbles, I guess, of like places where I'm like, I don't have to play the game and I'm with people who get it. And that's, like I need to remind myself what that base is, and I need to sort of reconnect with that, just because to not like, because I think it's very easy to be like, to get caught up in things sometimes as well. So, but it is always good to sort of go back and be like, well, what do I truly actually believe in, and what do I truly want things to look like? And it's good to have people around you that remind you of those things.
Places to recharge, to go back to who you truly are. Yeah, because sometimes when we're playing the game, we are having an alter ego, almost like a different version of ourselves in order to be playing that game. Yeah, and that's difficult, and that those do require a lot of time to get to terms with. Are there any more questions online from the listeners? Otherwise, we'll go into our quick fire round to wrap up the conversation. And we didn't actually promise the viewers we'll talk about food quite a bit.
We're just being about racism. Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. Like it's like we got so serious about all these like topics about class, racism, and the system change, and being women and being a minority. I was just but this is my first question of the quick fire round anyway, is what is your favorite Chinese dish?
Oh, that's so hard. It is, there's just so much Chinese food. Probably
top three.
Okay, top three, xiaolongbao, which is soup dumplings. Yep. I say that because you just can't really get decent xiaolongbao in New Zealand, so I think about them quite a lot.
You just dream about them, of that juice flowing out of that little pocket of dumplings.
So good. It's so good. Yeah, and it's just something I can never have in New Zealand. And then what else do I really love? I really like Uyghur food. So
what's that?
Uyghur food. Yeah, so sort of like all their sort of like lamb buns and the like ricey lamb dishes.
Yeah, and Xinjiang, right? That's the province.
Xinjiang. Yeah. And I can't really go past like pork spare ribs. It's another classic Shanghainese dish.
Yum cha, those ones, or the yum cha pork spare ribs?
Not specifically the yum chow ones, but the ones that kind of like the tang cu pai gu, like the Shanghainese style.
The Shanghainese style pork spare ribs. Oh,
Yeah.
you're making me hungry.
Yeah.
Awesome. What's my favorite? I think
What are your favorites, Suki?
my favorite 白斩鸡, 白切鸡. Yeah, the white chopped chicken. Yeah, like I made it a few weeks ago, and it really, that process of making it reminds me of my culture and like how I've seen my mum or my grandmother has been making the same dishes. Very fulfilling for the soul. We've got a few more questions online, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think we've got a comment from Lily first, which was going back to the conversation before. It's like, think that you need to be true to yourself if you want to make any change. I think so. Like for the change that we're passionate about and will continue to have fuel in order to make those change, we need to be true to ourselves. Otherwise, it's just tiring. That's my take. What's your take on that, Rose?
Yeah, I think it's hard to like work towards things that you don't actually believe in. So yeah, I think that's really true.
Cool. And then we've got one from Sam. What painful realizations about yourself did you have on your journey into coaching and writing? Oh, so many painful realizations that my ego is huge. Yeah.
Really, Suki?
Yeah. Like just how I like to like please people, like how I want to fulfill these expectations that I have for myself, how I want to have like these achievements and that, like, my gosh, painful, so painful, but so necessary to face them. Yeah, that's my one into coaching. What about you? Good question.
Well, that is a really great question, Sam.
Yeah.
I think it's back to that playing that game thing. It's just like I think I really realized that I needed to do that. And it was kind of something that I'd really felt uncomfortable doing for a lot of my life. But I was just like, actually, there's no other route into this. Like if I want to do it in this way and for the book to be received in the way that it has, there is no other way to sort of do it. And it made me kind of feel like I was like compromising something about myself in some ways, but I think it was kind of like I did what I needed to do. Yeah.
You did what you needed to do to have the impact that you wanted to make, to have those messages showing across. Awesome. I'll go back to the second quick fire question, which is like something that people always get wrong about you.
Something that people always get wrong about me. Oh my God. To be honest, not that much. Like I think I'm very easy to read.
You're very honest. Me too. The personality just shows. Okay, great. That's awesome. That is awesome. And the next question is like, what is your favorite pastime activity?
Currently I've been doing a lot of yoga. Just a lot of yoga. Yep.
Yeah. What does yoga bring to you?
It makes me stop thinking as much. Like you can't, like you have to sort of stop engaging your like very like very precise thought processes, and you need to be more in the body for yoga. So I think it's really good for me to just like switch off and stop consciously thinking so much.
The body and mind connection, rather than just the mind that is like running every time. Awesome. And what about the best piece of advice that you have received?
Ooh, I don't know. Do you feel like people give you advice? I feel like people have given me like realizations, but maybe not specifically advice.
Yeah, maybe not. Actually, like I don't like receiving advice most of the time.
Yeah.
Because I also believe in my coaching, I also believe in the person coming to that advice themselves rather than me telling them what to do. Because me telling them is just something that they should do rather than something that they want to do. So I think that's important. But the advice that I've been given, maybe it's like a piece of wisdom. Maybe it's a piece of wisdom rather than advice that I really like. Awareness is the first step to change. And without that, we can never change without awareness. Cool. And then last question is, if you had a magic wand, what would you do with it?
A magic wand. What would I do with it? Oh God. Wow. I don't know. Maybe I don't believe in quick fixes, so I don't know what I would do with it. It feels like anything you say would be cursed. You know, like those like you wish for a sausage or something, but then it turns out like your family members get turned into sausages. Like I feel like anything like that is inherently cursed.
Like it's not real. It's just it can't happen. So
I don't think that
consistent.
I just don't believe that you could like articulate like one thing and be like, this solves everything. Like, I think it's more complicated.
Fair enough. Oh yeah, I'll do a coaching plug again, which is like consistent hard work will get you to work to the results that you really want in your life. There are no quick fixes in terms of coaching as well. That is awesome. Yeah. So like, thank you everyone that have come to the end. Unless there are any more questions, thank you everyone for coming to the first ever session of the Purpose Driven Community. We'll be here again next week, which is just me, myself, doing a book review on Atomic Habits, which is my favorite habit book that I've read. So I'll do a book review that's online. So hopefully that will see you next week, 11 a.m. And the week after, I'll interview Lauren Pete, who is the CEO of Ally Schools New Zealand, which will talk a lot more about diversity and inclusion. And if you like what Rose has talked about and want to check out her book, here's the plug again. For All Who Live on Islands is available on unitybooks.nz. And then the plug for myself is, if you want to find your purpose, gain self-confidence and self-love, then join the Purpose Program. You can find out more information on www.su.org. And the next one is starting on 5th of May, which will talk a lot more about your life direction, who you are as a person, and who you want to be. And that is us for today. Oh, how do I get into a call with you two? We've got some thanks online, and also how do we go get? If we can do a three-way call, Shannon. you want conversation with us to give us some feedback? That would be great. This is our first session, and I'm really, really grateful for Rose for her candidness and all the thoughts that she's got and going on in her head. It's all very, very helpful to get to know her better. Yes, so mihi everyone, and my Maori is not that great, but yes, thank you so much for tuning in.
Shannon,
that we are all cousins, yes, from a different mother and from lots of generations before. So thank you, and we'll end the podcast, the broadcast here. See you. Bye. Have a good Saturday and good long weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.